Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
This is the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston, and I am here with a kind-hearted man named Russell, who has lost a whole bunch of weight and, more importantly, has found a new and peaceful life with a relationship with food. Russell has agreed to share his story and talk about his success and trials and tribulations and counsel and learnings all along the way. Russell, how are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
Good, nice to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
Appreciate it.
So how about we start at the beginning? What was your life with food like? Start as early as you like.
Sure. My dad would jokingly say, son, you only eat one meal a day. Starts when you get up in the morning and it ends when you go to bed at night. I grew up in a family where food was love and happiness. Food was comfort and consolation. And I pretty much grew up alone in my bedroom and just saw food as the only pleasure I got in life. So I was always a fat kid, and it was kind of like obesity ran in our family. That was it.
What happened because of that? Did you take pleasure with food? Were you miserable about the after effects? How heavy did you get? What happened?
You get that temporary high or a sugar high or the sugar, the fat, the salt, these large amounts in that kind of food you binge with, but then you always hate it and regret it later on. So it's a love-hate relationship. But yeah, I mean, it resulted in self-consciousness, always being picked on, called names, stuff like that. So it's just kind of a miserable way to go.
Yeah. And so did you gain a lot of weight?
Yeah, I was always a really fat kid. And to top it off, my dad kind of had the mindset, if you hear that name, if somebody calls you that magic word fat, that's fighting words. And so I'd live in fear of bullies and fear that I'd get called a name and have to fight. And I mean, I did well in the fights because they never thought there was any muscle under the fat, but I just lived kind of in a situation of fear and just really lonely, alone in my bedroom.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What did you try to make it better?
Well, nothing really. When I was about 16, my mom put me on a diet and said, I'll help you get serious. And I lost my weight at that time and I was thin. And then about 18, I went into Air Force ROTC at the University of Memphis. So for the 4 years I was in ROTC and then 15 years in the Air Force, I didn't have a weight problem, mainly because I didn't have a choice, military.
They're not going to let you have a weight problem, right?
You're not kidding.
Yeah.
So that was it. But when I got out of the Air Force, I went from like 200 pounds to 275. And I stayed at 275 for about 20 years. And then when we lived in Denver, Colorado, we had some just incredibly painful and stressful experiences in our family. And then we moved from Denver to Waco, Texas in summer 2016. And then my weight grew to 300 pounds. When the sleep clinic diagnosed me with sleep apnea, they also diagnosed me with, quote, morbid obesity, unquote. I was so discouraged. I never saw those two words together in my life. I had to Google it, man.
You didn't hit them when they said that? Those weren't fighting words?
It wasn't fighting words. It was just deflating. I was just totally bummed out because heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, cancer, all that stuff runs in my family. And I was setting myself up for it.
We have a really similar story in terms of our weight. I don't know if I was 300 because I stopped weighing myself at about 257.
Exactly. You don't want to know.
I didn't want to know. I really didn't want to know. So that was 2016. What happened from there?
Like I said, I looked in the mirror. I said, you're a 60-year-old man and you're 300 pounds. So I am not going to die a fat old man. I started reading and learning things. Gosh, over the last 2 years, Glenn, I've read over 24 books. So that's kind of what I did. I just kept reading and learning the best things I could from all the different books on Amazon.
What did you learn? What was helpful? What wasn't helpful?
I'll be honest with you. When we were in Denver, I got this book on sale from a grocery store. It had to do with cognitive behavioral therapy and weight loss. To listeners, it sounds like a complicated, fancy term, but it's really profoundly easy. And it's when we identify the pig's lies and then refute them with the truth. And what I would do, Glenn, is I would take these lies that I believed, and whenever I identified them, I'd write them down and then respond to them with the truth. And I'd put these on index cards, little 3x5 cards, and regularly review them to just rewire my brain. And that was the defensive part. The offensive part was the affirmations, the mantras, truths that you confess, you declare out loud, that kind of thing. And I would just review those things. I just started thinking differently. For decades, I have all this head knowledge about diet and exercise, but it didn't become real and change my life till I started doing these things.
Could you give some examples of the lies you were telling yourself and what the refutations were?
Oh, man.
Or the mantras that you positively affirm that help you?
For example, and I'll define my terms here just to qualify it, but like if I fall on my face, I would say a lapse is not a relapse.
Got it.
I would define a lapse as an individual slip up, whereas a relapse is totally backsliding into a former bad habit or lifestyle. Just because I slipped up doesn't mean I have to go back and be what I was like before. And like you said, I'm a lean, healthy man. I'm a lean, active, athletic man, something like that. Affirmations of identity that start with I am. This is who I am now. If anyone heard me say that at 300 pounds, they would have laughed me up. But I've lost 78 pounds so far. It'll be over 100, Lord willing, when I'm done. In the book that I read, the author talks about sabotaging thoughts versus helpful replies. I have the audacity to believe in absolutes, so I would replace that with lies versus the truth. You talk about it as pig squeals versus real-time refutations. But it's that same thing, you've got this force, this set of desires or this drive in you that is in you, but it is not you. And it's self-destructive. And the real me, the part of me that's in control, that logical thinking brain says, that's not who I am. I don't have to do these things. That's not me. And just refuting them with truth. The pig doesn't have a chance when you take those lies and put them up against the light of reality.
So what I'm hearing is that it amplified the separation between your constructive and destructive thoughts. And it allowed you to identify with the constructive thoughts and aggressively disavow the pig or the set of destructive thoughts. And it allowed you to become the kind of person you wanted to be, more so than just engaging in a cognitive technique.
Right, Glenn. But I think something else really has to be said. In the last 2 years, like I said, I've read over 24 books. Your book, that one book, encompassed all of the good things, because I've taken notes and underlined profusely. And your book and your other books as well take all the truths that I've learned, the best and the true things from all the other books, and puts it all together in one place. And then the construct of that inner pig imagery, I mean, that was life-changing.
I'm so happy. I'm so glad that worked for you. Did you take to it right away? Was it at all aversive to you? What was your initial reaction?
You've got that tough love approach. It's like somebody tells you, I am so sorry. I told you that your uncle left you $10,000. I'm so sorry that you're wrong about that. The truth is he left you $100,000. Well, you're not going to break my heart by telling me I was wrong when the truth is so much more exciting and liberating. The tough love approach, you don't come across as having a mean-spirited demeanor at all. You love people. Your heart and passion is to help them. Like I'm a teacher, so my passion is in my students' success when they do well. The truth is liberating. It does set you free.
I think it served the population because there's so much misunderstanding about how to separate your constructive versus destructive thoughts. And the destructive thoughts are very seductive, and our society reinforces them. Our society really has a tacit agreement to support each other to slowly kill yourself with food. And so I felt like swinging the pendulum the other way as far as I could get it was necessary to do forcefully. But you're right, since it's something that can make a gigantic difference in the way that people have eaten for decades. Every day I hear from people who say, nothing else worked for me. This really got through to me when nothing else did. I feel vindicated that I was so aggressive, even though I felt a little guilty about it when I wrote the book. And a lot of people who hear me talk or hear me coach someone, they say, I had no idea you were going to sound like that. I thought you were going to be a real a-hole. I'm not, I guess. Russell, how do you know that this isn't just another diet? You lost a bunch of weight before you went into the military. How do you know you're just not on another diet?
That's a really good question, because here's the thing, Glenn. When you talk about what worked, quote unquote, what worked before the transformation started in the summer of 2016, what worked was when I'd get on my Schwinn Airdyne, this exercise bike. I love that. I call it my lifeline. And whenever I would regularly do cardio, high intensity intervals, before I put on all the weight, I was a bodybuilder in the Air Force, and I could even see my abs one time. It was amazing. I thought I had a problem when I saw those bumps, and it's like, oh no, okay, that's supposed to be normal. When I did my cardio regularly, I would lose the magic number of 25 to 30 pounds max, no more than that. And then I would somehow self-sabotage, and I would gain it all back and more every time. And it was because what I didn't understand is that exercise alone will not make you successful in the long run without the accompanying dietary discipline, nutritious eating, self-control. It's like the saying I heard, you can go running all you want, but you can't outrun your fork.
Oh, I never heard that. That's great.
I read a lot of books, but you can't outrun your fork. So the food plan must come first, and then the exercise is vitally important, because the goal for me is optimum physical fitness as far as it depends on me. But fat loss is a wonderful byproduct, but I want to be healthy, and you can't just have sagging, flabby muscles. So you want to be physically fit and strong, and fat loss is part of that. But yeah, I would lose weight and then put it back on. But this is not a diet. This is a transformation. I believe that 80 to 90% of permanent weight loss, which is the only kind of value, is lifelong weight loss, is in the mind. 80 to 90% is in the mind. You transform how you think, then it sets you free. And I have some different mantras that I'd be glad to share.
Oh, please.
Oh, sure. Like one of them is not my food. When you view pig slop, which we call, unhealthy food or processed foods, what deviates in my mind from whole natural foods, I just say that is not my food, not my food. Somebody else's, but not my food. Another one is there's more fun and pleasure in life than what I put in my mouth. I think my favorite ritual is I stand at the doorway of my kitchen like 8 p.m. I rub my hands together and I say, kitchen is closed. I've already eaten all the calories I need for one day. Any more than that will just turn to fat. I dismiss the kitchen. I dismiss it. And there's a mindset. Okay, as of right now, you're done eating. And then if I feel that normal, healthy, mild hunger at nighttime before bed, I just say to myself, emptiness in my stomach leads to fullness in my life.
Oh, that's good. I never heard that before. That's great.
Oh, thanks. That's one of my own. Yeah, I know that I don't need the food. So the only reason for eating it is to give my taste buds temporary pleasure, which I'll pay for later on.
Could you say it again? Emptiness in my stomach leads to fullness in my life.
That's exactly right.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic.
Well, thanks.
Are there more?
I'm trying to brainstorm. I actually have several pages of them. I was afraid I'd give you too much. I tend to talk too much, Glenn. So,
Russell, we'll have to have you back on. You can tell us more a different time.
Well, I've lost like 78 pounds. When I lose the rest, and I've lost over 100 pounds, I know you said that you'd like to do a follow-up with me. We can email and you can tell me what you want. Glenn, I fear that I talk too much and I'm sensitive to giving people more of an answer than they wanted to hear.
Yeah, but you haven't talked too much at all. What you don't realize, Russell, is that you're not alone. You're far from the only person that suffered in the way that you did. I lived a lonely life also, and it was easier to sit and eat potato chips and watch TV than to go get a girlfriend or something. As a consequence, we think that we're all alone. We lived a life alone and we had all this loneliness, but we're really not alone. And when someone gets to hear the thinking process, see, it's one thing when I say it, but it's another thing when someone who's actually been through it and transformed has said it and has been really successful. You really can't say too much. Whatever you're willing to reveal, whatever you're willing to share with the audience, you'll see there'll be hundreds, if not thousands of people that write in and say, oh my God, this guy was reading from my diary. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. That was so helpful.
Well, one of the things you said, Glenn, when you first suggested interviewing me, I said, if you want to wait till I get done, I might have more valuable stuff to say. And you said, we can do a follow-up when you're done, but people benefit by folks while they're in process, while they're on the journey. One of the things you said is people like to root for you while you're still running on that race. And it's like, hey, in that case, I'll do it because I need all the encouragement I can get. I'm grateful if anybody's pulling for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, people love to do that. I'll get this out pretty soon. What didn't I ask you that I should have asked you? What did we want to cover that I haven't gotten to?
Some thoughts or advice about the long-term goal. This was something from reading that I had done a few months ago. What I would want to encourage people to do, and this is something that really helped me when I read it. In fact, I've read it over and over again, but here's the notion. Fall in love with the journey, not the destination. Because the real reward is the person you're becoming, not the compliments or the nicer clothes and stuff like that. In other words, when somebody reaches some wonderful goal, people only want to hear about the sexy things, the visible prizes they get at their finish line. What they usually don't want to hear about are the things that cause the success, the day-to-day journey, the details, the disciplines. So don't fall in love with the kudos of being lean and healthy. Fall in love with the lifestyle it takes to become a lean, healthy person, and then you'll sustain it for life.
It's a really good way to put it. My experience is that when people come in, they want to lose weight as fast as possible. They're exhausted from binging. They feel like binging is ruining their life, but they're very focused on how can I get the weight off? They want to stop binging, but really it's how can I get the weight off? And what we find, we have to slow them down a little bit because it turns out that losing weight too fast keeps you on the feast and famine cycle and makes it much more difficult to stop binging. What we find is that we slow them down, we create very simple rules, we get them started, and then suddenly the sense of hopelessness and powerlessness and confusion lifts. And they start to feel like they're not powerless and they do have some hope and they can control this thing and they're no longer obsessed with food all the time. And then weight loss becomes secondary. And our clients do lose weight. We do get them on a trajectory, and you're not unusual in terms of you've lost more weight than the typical person does. But it's not at all unusual what you're describing. Our clients do lose weight. But usually by the third or the fourth week they're in the program, they say, I just want to hold on to this state of mind. I don't care how fast I lose weight. I don't care if it's only a half a pound a week. I just want to hold on to this state of mind because I'm not obsessing about food and I feel much more present and my digestion is so much better and I feel like my skin is clearer and I'm sleeping better and I'm alive again. Yeah, I'm still heavy, but I'm alive again and I get it. It's the person I'm becoming. I mean, that's the way you're describing it. And a lot of people listening now who are still binging and struggling are going to say, yeah, but how do I lose weight? But you got to be willing to fall in love with the journey. As trite as it sounds, it's probably the best way to put it. The fastest way to lose weight is slowly, and the way you do that is you fall in love with the journey, not the destination.
My poor dear mother, she was obese her whole life. She's probably the most beautiful, giving person I've ever met before. But my poor parents, they had these struggles and they were honest and real. They always said, no one did it to me, I did it to myself. But the problem is they simply didn't have the tools and the understanding that, I've been grateful to be getting exposed to. They just didn't know those things, so they didn't have the ability to do that. But yeah, it's the person you're becoming. Because yeah, she was obese her entire life. And when I dieted with her, it was that feast or famine cycle. Your body perceives a famine coming, so it conserves fat, which is a good thing from a survival standpoint, but it's not what we want to do. And when you become that person that doesn't obsess over food, and that's not the greatest joy and pleasure of your life anymore, you start thinking like a person who's naturally thin, and your body follows suit.
Exactly. Is there anything else? Anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't, or something you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to talk about?
Thanks for asking, Glenn. I want to benefit the listeners, and to be honest and real, what really worked for me over the last couple of years that practically would help people. And of course, it's basically 3 pillars of success, I call them. And the first and foremost one, the primary pillar, is cognitive behavioral therapy, just a fancy term, both defensive and offensive. And I've already said this, but to reinforce, defensively, writing down the pig squeals and my responses, where I identify the pig's lies and then refute them with the truth. And then offensively, those affirmations, those mantras that you declare. And like I said, I did put them on 3x5 index cards and just continually review them to reprogram my mind.
I want to hear more of them next time. That's terrific.
And then secondly, the second pillar was nutrition, whole natural foods, not the processed junk, foods that were naturally available before big food industry came along. to hire full-time chemists to engineer artificial garbage to put in our food. That's profoundly simple, but it's important. And then the third pillar, this is real important to me too, is continuously introducing small, incremental, yet permanent lifestyle changes. For example, dietary changes, adding foods, removing foods, changing portion sizes, tweaking the food plan. But the other thing, Glenn, is these small, incremental, but permanent changes is exercise. I'm kind of a naturalist myself. I love body weight exercises, as opposed to lifting weights. And I have some full body workouts that I love that are fun for me. And you want to choose exercise that you love so you'll sustain it in the long run. You're taking a lifelong view. This is something that's for the rest of my life, not a program I'm on.
I want to say something about this because one of the most recent things that we're observing and thinking about is how to get people to take short-term success and turn it into long-term success. And a lot of it has to do with the identity change that you're talking about. But it works even better when you allow that identity change to permeate the rest of your life. So you've discovered this structure of mind that works for you to beat your worst enemy. And for most people who are listening to this, the pig was their worst enemy. That destructive part of their lizard brain that overtook their best thinking, their entire life. It personally kept my head in the garbage pail, picking out the food that I said I wouldn't eat again. It stopped you from being present in relationships, stopped you from pursuing all your opportunities. It's your worst enemy, but you beat it with this structure of mind. Well, when you start to integrate that structure of mind into the rest of your life with your exercise, but also you can do it with your relationship, you can do it with your productivity, you can do it with your hygiene, you can do it with your organizational skills around the house. You can start to very clearly define what's healthy and unhealthy behavior in a small and incremental way so you don't notice it. And what you're basically doing is adding small disciplines which add up to a very strong character and a commitment to be a person you never thought you could be. That's what we hypothesize and what I really believe keeps people in this in the long run is making it a lifestyle, not just about food, but about the totality of your life. Is that what you're saying?
I think it really is. In fact, I know it is because it's like the human mind and brain does not do well with drastic, sudden change. That's why people go on this feast or famine thing. They go on a diet. Well, if you go on it, you're going to go off of it. And, and that's what happens, But if you make small incremental changes, you're tricking your mind, making one smooth little thing. And that's been the key for me, Glenn. Summarize those 3 pillars is continually transitioning my lifestyle into that of a naturally thin person, growing out of old habits and establishing new ones until it's like I've become a whole new person. But you just kind of do one little mini habit at a time, so to speak, until there's changes are large.
I love that. What else, Russell?
Well, whenever somebody says they want to pick my brain, I say it's slim pickings. But yeah, I can't think of anything else at this point, but I'm really honored that anyone would ever ask my opinion. And
you thought of a lot. You thought of a lot, and you've got a lot more value to offer than you think that you do. Which, by the way, is the case with every binge eater. Part of binge eating is a devaluation of your worth and contribution to friends, family, and society as a whole. Most binge eaters walk around with a kind of shy or ashamed attitude, thinking that they don't really deserve, they're not really worthwhile contributing, and then they are overwhelmed and shocked when they see how much positive response they get to sharing. It's part of the emergence from binge eating and becoming a different person to be willing to accept that you have this value to contribute. And I can tell you, having done thousands of sessions, that you've got a very strong constellation of insights and you've integrated this system as well as anybody that I've talked to. You're a guy that people are going to want to hear from. So I really want to thank you, Russell. This was fantastic.
You did nail it, Glenn. I mean, you're not talking to a guy who has a high opinion of himself. So if anybody will benefit by it, I love sharing it.
Yeah.
I don't have to go looking at those other 24 books. I've got it all in one place for that primary pillar of changing.
Thanks, man.
Rewiring the brain. I really meant that. Yeah.
Can I leave you with a thought?
Sure.
It's good to be humble and work hard. I was trained like that also. Be humble, work hard. Sometimes the teacher, always a student, that kind of thing. But when you figured something out that relieves suffering, then it's time to open your mouth. Then it's time to let go of the humility. I'm always be open to learning.
Right.
But, especially because this kind of thing is not widely known and society looks at it very differently. And there are a lot of counter proposals which are obfuscating the information's ability to get out there. I need people like you to open your mouth. open your mouth, stand up, stick out your chest, and be proud of who you are and what you've become so that people can emulate you.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.